to the Workings of Karma lecture series. This is based on the book by the same name. The program structure is as follows. First, we start off with meditation. This is followed by the lecture. We have a questions and answers session scheduled after the lecture. After the questions and answers session, we conclude the program. For the questions and answers session, please post your questions in the Facebook and YouTube chat or comment section in the live video. This program continues on every Wednesday at the same time, that is, 2 p.m. Coordinated Universal Time or Greenwich Mean Time. This translates to 7:30 p.m. Sri Lanka and India time. Please note and convert this time to your local time and join us every week for this enlightening Dharma Talks series by a very erudite monk. Today's lecturer has a bachelor's degree in Buddhist philosophy and religious studies from the Buddhist and Pali University of Sri Lanka. Also, the Venerable has studied under guidance of notable teachers for 5 years. Now we invite the Most Venerable Teacher to start the meditation session, followed by the Dharma talk and questions and answers session. The meditation session will start now. This will be followed by the lecture.
Okay, nice. So let's sit in a comfortable meditation posture. Make sure your back is erect. We will meditate with opened eyes. We'll keep our eyes a little open. Maximum half open seems to be fine. Anything less than half open is also fine. And we keep our hands connected. You do not need to do some weird things with the thumbs. You can simply rest them in your hands, keep that in the lap, and we can make the first determination in our minds voicelessly. From now on, for 10 minutes, I will meditate on muscles and radiate loving kindness without any movement. From now on, for 10 minutes, I will meditate on muscles and radiate loving kindness without any movement. From now on, for 10 minutes, I will meditate on muscles and radiate loving kindness without any movement. And with that determination, we can gently, lovingly notice there's a flat piece of sinew at the top of the head. We allow it to be heavy and changing. We continue in this manner to the forehead, eyes, nose, lips, chin, cheeks, ears, back of the head. We allow all of the muscles and sinews throughout the head to be heavy and changing. We continue to the neck, shoulders, arms, elbows, forearms, wrists, palms, fingers, tips of fingers, chest, abdomen, back, we allow all of the muscles and sinews throughout the upper part of the body to be heavy and changing. We continue to the buttocks, thighs, knees, calves, heels, soles, toes, tips of toes, we allow all of the muscles and sinews throughout the body to be heavy and changing. And we allow all of the body parts, all of the body to be changing. And as we allow the body to be the way it is, we enjoy freedom from worry about the body. So let's be mindful of this freedom. Let's watch this piece. Now let's share our peace with other living beings. In our minds, voicelessly, we can wish, we can allow. We don't try, we don't force. Just allow. May all beings in this room be in peace. May all beings in this building be in peace. Now let's gradually expand our thought of loving kindness. May all beings in this city or village be in peace. May all beings in this country be in peace. May all beings on this continent be in peace. May all beings on this planet be in peace. May all beings, including me, be in peace. Now, because the time for this sitting is finished, let's make the last determination in our minds voicelessly. From now on, I will always be calm. From now on, I will always be calm. From now on, I will always be calm. And with that determination, we can slowly, mindfully change the way of our sitting. And let's take one more minute during which we motionlessly enjoy the peace we gained in meditation and watch what's our mind doing now. Very well.
Lecture will start now. A questions and answers session will be held after the lecture. Post your questions in the Facebook and YouTube chat or comments section.
Okay, so I will be sharing with you my screen. So previously we were talking about, again about the qualities or characteristics of the so-called, what is it called here? Uneducated, ordinary person. So I was explaining the problem that actually this text doesn't really explain who is an uneducated, ordinary person. It rather explains who is not an arahant, because to fulfill all these things would mean simply to become an arahant. But most importantly, a person who is still not enlightened but is so-called the good one is somebody who trains hard in dana, sila, samadhi. The Buddha made a little different distinction, and I think that distinction would be very useful here. It's missing here from this text, so I'll add it from my knowledge. So that's the distinction into the so-called, it's the distinction into Paduma Upasaka and Chandala Upasaka. So Upasaka Paduma, Upasaka Chandala, that's how the Buddha says it. So Upasaka Paduma is a layperson who is like a lotus. And here lotus is meant as something beautiful, as something inspirational, something nice, something good. Then we have Upasaka Chandala. Chandala is translated in Burmese as a slave. Okay, so the word Chandala actually has several meanings and usages, but here it means a slave, somebody who's following another person's orders without any power to change anything, to do anything. So, but here we need to understand that everybody has the power to be an Upasaka Paduma, to be a lotus layperson, and also everybody has the power to be Upasaka Chandala, the slave lotus person. So it's not like that the person is a slave because they must do these 5 things that I will explain soon. But the person who is a slave, they're slave because they're slaves of their defilement, mental defilement of greed, hatred, ignorance. So not only that they are slaves now, but they will be slaves in the future. They are also slaves of the 5 maras. We distinguish 5 kinds of mara. So we have Deva Mara, Machu Mara, Kilesa Mara, Abhisankara Mara, and Kandamara. So the Deva Mara is the deity, is the god Mara, who is believed to believe that he has the power over sensual pleasures. But we believe that he doesn't disturb people anymore. So you cannot really say that something that happens to you or some of your weaknesses, that they're the fault of Mara, because that's not fair. It's not his fault. It is your fault. So we do not blame others for our faults. If I'm weak that I didn't meditate, or I'm weak because I got angry, that's my fault. That's it. And because it's my fault, it means that I have full power over the next time so that it doesn't happen again. It's so practical. As soon as you blame another person, well, then why wouldn't you be lazy and do the same mistake again? Because it's another person's problem, right? Not yours. Or maybe it's the other person's 1% and you're 99%. And it was actually this 1% which prevented you from doing it right. Then why would people do good things? If it would be correct to blame things on others, well, then we don't have to do anything right. Then we can just kill each other and steal each other and say, well, actually, that was his fault. Because it's always somehow another person's fault if you are clever to say that. Okay, so we never blame things on others. So Mara is not dead, Mara lives, but Mara does not disturb us anymore. Mara, according to the suttas, was subdued by the great Arahant Venerable Moggallana. We can talk about it later if you ask. Or, according to some others, still in Theravada tradition, he was subdued by the great Venerable Master Upagutta. But whoever has subdued him doesn't really matter. The most important thing here is the practical one, that we never blame anything on another person. Everything is entirely in our own responsibility. And that gives us the full freedom to make sure next time we do it right. Whatever we do wrong, we can learn from it and somehow do it right the next time. Never it's a fault of another person. It's always 100% our fault. And it goes the other way around too. Whatever right you do, it's 100% your merit. It's 100% your good. It's 100% you are amazing. So we always remember that we have the 100% power over everything that we think, say, and do. So there are 4 kinds of Mara, in addition to the Mara 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲, who doesn't disturb us anymore. And they are the Kilesa Mara. So that means the Mara actually means the Lord of Death, or death simply. So death caused by greed, hatred, ignorance. Due to greed, hatred, ignorance, we do bad actions or good actions based on ignorance. And then based on the ignorance and those actions, we die and are born again. Then we have Abhisankara Mara. That's a little subtle point. So that's coming from dependent origination. Because of ignorance, there are intentions, and these intentions are either skillful or unskillful. The problem with skillful intentions is not that they're skillful. The problem is that they're based on ignorance. So even in Myanmar, you will find some frivolous monks who say whatever they want to say, who say, do not do good deeds. It is wrong. We must do good deeds, but we shouldn't do them based on ignorance. How will you do that? To get rid of ignorance, you will have to become an arahant. Even an anagami still has an ignorance. Okay? In the 10 fetters, a streamanter removes 3. Once returner reduces 2 more. A non-returner removes these 2. And then an arahant only removes the remaining 5. And it's the remaining 5 which contain the ignorance. So we will have ignorance until the moment when we become arahants. Only with the moment of becoming arahants, we remove all ignorance. So there will always be ignorance. You cannot really remove that until you become an arahant. Okay, so the point here is that whatever are good actions, they're based on ignorance. You cannot really not do good actions. You will always do good actions or bad actions. You just cannot avoid that. But as you do good actions through wisdom, you can gradually remove ignorance And through removed ignorance, you get free from doing good actions because you substituted it by functional actions. What are functional actions? Functional actions are done by arahants and they are not based on ignorance. Okay, so that's Abhisankara Mara. Then we have Kantamara. Kantamara is the 5 aggregates. When you die because of the mind or because of the body. And that's the 5 aggregates: body, feelings, perceptions, intentions, and consciousness. Now, I translate sankharas as intentions based on Sattatthana Sutta in, I think, Samyutta Nikaya. So you may understand sankharas as 50 cetasikas. I understand them as intentions, and both of them are correct based on your point of view. Now, practically, however, your intentions and most importantly, in case of the practice of meditation, we are supposed to observe sankharas as intentions. Because Sattatthana Sutta, where the Buddha explains 5 aggregates in a very different way than he explains it in Abhidhamma, shows there the Buddha interprets the sankharas as intentions, not at all as cetasika or citta. Absolutely not. So I translate it as intentions because that's practical and it's related to us. Then, with these intentions and consciousness, these 5 aggregates are the killer of all of us. If we didn't have any of these 5 aggregates, we would not die. Except what would remain if we removed the 5 aggregates? Finally, Majjhumara, death on its own. So these are the 5 maras. And while we are not, we are already free and entirely liberated from the Devaputta Mara, we still have these 4. So we still have to wage war with these 4 maras. And how do we do that? Through dana, generosity, which means giving. Whenever I say generosity, it means giving and nothing else. Morality, sila, and meditation, bhavana. Okay, so these are the 5 maras, and Paduma Upasaka, a lotus layperson. A lotus layperson has 5 special characteristics, and they distinguish this lotus person from the slave person. So the slave person is the slave of the maras, and the slave person also has these 5 things. And the Buddha first starts with the slave layperson, so we'll start with number 2. First of all, slave person doesn't have faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So if the person doesn't have faith, if they do not trust that the Buddha became enlightened, that the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings, leads towards enlightenment, that Sangha, the community of monks, work hard to become enlightened, if the layperson doesn't believe that, they don't have faith. And that's one of the traits, one of the characteristics of a slave layperson. 2. Sila. So a slave layperson does not have morality. So they break the 5 precepts: kill, steal, commit adultery, tell lies, or drink alcohol, or take drugs. 3. A slave layperson is superstitious. So they believe that if they see something or if they hear something particular, they will die. Or if they do not see something or do not hear something, they will not die. Or if they see something or hear something else, then they will be lucky. And if they do not see that, they will not be lucky. So that's superstitious. So being superstitious is a big problem. Then, following astrology. Following astrology is a problem. But here, be careful. The Buddha did not really say if somebody follows astrology, they're a slave layperson. The Buddha didn't say that. The Buddha here says, In the translation, translated loosely, the Buddha explains that the person follows the omens, the lucky signs, rather than Kamma. So there's a preference, and that's the problem. If the layperson prefers going to an astrologer and following astrologer's instruction rather than following Kamma, that means dedicating themselves to generosity, morality, meditation, well, then that's a characteristic of a slave layperson. And finally, number 5, a slave layperson supports monks and ascetics of non-Buddhist religions or non-Buddhist philosophical whatever movements more than the Buddhist monks. Okay, so how does a lotus layperson look like? Now, you probably already suspect that it will be the same except opposite. So, a lotus layperson has faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, follows the precepts very carefully and strictly, doesn't believe in superstitions, doesn't follow astrology or takes Kamma as more important than astrology as just some kind of secondary support. And a lotus layperson supports Buddhist monks more enthusiastically than monks and ascetics of any other religion. Now, this thing I think is still pretty interesting because unlike in the other religions, where you will usually find the idea that you should not, the book is not shared, even better. So, unlike in the other religions, where it is suggested that you do not actually that you should not actually support anyone else than those who follow your religion. In Buddhism, actually, you are supported in following, in supporting followers of other religions. Moreover, the Buddha says, if you ever donate a full meal, that means a sumptuous, complete, satisfying meal, to an ascetic, to a monk, to a rishi or hermit or whatever way you call them, who meditates to such a level that he or she attains the deep level of concentration, so-called jhana or absorption, so that he or she subdues, not removes by enlightenment, he just subdues through concentration, their greed and hatred, then that donation will bring you result 100,000 times, 100,000 times. So that would be 10 to the power of 10. 100,000 times 100,000 for giving something to a non-Buddhist. I think that's amazing. And the commentaries explain here, not just for the 100,000 times 100,000, but the commentaries here provide the explanation that 100,000 times 100,000 doesn't mean that you will get 100,000 times 100,000, that sumptuous and complete meal that you gave to that ascetic. They explain that for 100,000 times 100,000 times of lives, you will enjoy the plentifulness, the abundance of long life, beauty, pleasure, power, and wisdom or knowledge. So I think that's pretty interesting. Imagine that Muhammad or Jesus or somebody else would tell you, well, if you give something to someone who does not follow my teaching, then you will enjoy for 100,000 times of 100,000 times lives, abundance of long life, beauty, pleasure, and power, and intelligence. I cannot imagine that. It just is not in the other religions. It's not there. It's only in Buddhism. So that's something that makes me quite amazed. It's very interesting. Of course, if you donate something to somebody who is just going to become enlightened as a follower of the Buddha, or then even more so, if to somebody who's enlightened, the result or the reward is much higher. But still, I think this is very interesting and very remarkable in Buddhism, something that I do not see in any other religion or philosophy. Okay, so here what I want to say is that Paduma Upasaka is the wise Upasaka. Even though this lotus Upasaka doesn't, for example, understand the five aggregates and the Eightfold Noble Path and so on and on and on, that doesn't really matter. Because this person has faith in the Buddha and dedicates themselves to following the Buddha's teachings, they will soon understand the five aggregates, they will soon understand the Eightfold Noble Path, and very probably become an arahant. Whereas the person who understands the five aggregates, follows the Eightfold Noble Path, but does not have faith in the Buddha, or does not support the monks, or does not follow the virtue, they will surely go to hell. They will surely suffer, either this life or next life or in both. So I think it's more important to follow the Buddha's original teachings when the Buddha clearly explains who is the wise layperson and who is not the wise person. Saying that, oh, if you're not an arahant, you're just so bad, doesn't really help. But it definitely may inspire some of you to work hard to become an arahant. And with that attitude, these teachings is fine. So as you can see, I'm very critical of everything and everybody. But I would like to encourage you to be that critical as well. Until we are critical, we're not really following the Buddha's teachings. Buddha's teachings is 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗲, the critical philosophy. We are criticizing, analyzing, splitting the hairs every time. We are very critical, very skeptical to everything and anything and anyone and everyone. That's the correct Buddha's teachings. That is 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗲. As soon as you say the Buddha's teachings is not 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗲, that you just need to believe, it's not 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗲. It is no more Theravada. It is no more Buddhism. And in the third Buddhist council, Theravada Buddhist council, when you would say that you're not 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗲𝗲, you would actually be forcefully disrobed and expelled from the monkhood by the great King Asoka himself. So if you're not skeptical, it's wrong. So I would like to encourage you all to be skeptical, to be critical, because that's the Buddhist way. That's the right way to do it. And every other way is wrong. Okay, so let's move on. I'm not sure whether I'm still sharing with you the screen. So whatever it is. Oh, I see. I have not been sharing with you the screen until now. Now I can see that. So I will try to resolve that. So I'm sharing with you the window, but the window shows to me black. But I see the window in full color. So I will have to resolve that problem. Okay, so let's try this one. Good, sharing the full screen works. So let's continue. Let's do at least one page. So he says the self and the world are eternal, barren, like a mountain peak set firmly as a post. Who is he? He is the uneducated layperson. All right. So that's a wrong view. All right. You would get that wrong view if you don't have faith in the Buddha. The faith in the Buddha, the Saddha, already resolves quite a few ideas mentioned in this book as characteristics of an uneducated layperson. But it doesn't necessarily say so. Like the fact that you have faith is enough for you to be a very good person, to be a lotus-like layperson. The rest will just follow later. We cannot just criticize anyone who's just not perfect. No, instead we praise everybody who works on themselves. There are people who believe they are arahants, but actually they have sex with ladies, or they sexually abuse ladies and so on. Yeah, yeah, and they even look like monks. So, is it better to be an arahant and say everywhere that he knows everything and understands everything, but actually break the major rules? Or would it be actually better to not be an arahant, or not to say that they are an arahant? Of course, being an arahant is better. But wouldn't it be better to say that you are not an arahant, that you're not enlightened, but that you work hard to become enlightened, latest the next second? I believe that's better than going around and saying that somebody's an arahant, deceiving everybody else. So I would not be that much critical like this. I like more when people work hard on themselves rather than when they praise themselves. Okay, so basics. Basics is the right view. And the right view is that there is body and mind, and that they're conditioned. So to believe that the self and the world are barren is to deny that kamma produces a result. So there is body, there is mind, and they're conditioned. They're conditioned through the 24 links of condition. We know them as patthana, the relational, they're called relational conditions. Okay, so it's very important to have this basic right view that there is impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self in all of the 5 aggregates. There is no self beyond the 5 aggregates either. And there is kamma, and that is action dependent on ignorance. And with this action dependent on ignorance, there is consequence known as vipaka. The commentary to the clock-bound sutta explains how the 20 views of self are either the annihilation view or eternity view. The subcommentary gives the details. Well, I think that it will come soon, so we'll check it out in detail. The Digha Nikaya commentary, DA is an abbreviation from Digha Nikaya Atthakatha, so Digha Nikaya commentary, explains that it refers to being unable to produce fruit or children, and jhana being unable to produce rebirth. So vanja is a Pali word. Just like you have the Pali word kamma, we have the Pali word vanja. And these Pali words, they have their meaning in the general sense, like in the daily world, daily life, and they also have their spiritual meaning. So, for example, Sangha means community. It can be a community of birds or community of ladies, but also Sangha, in the spiritual sense, however, means the community of monks and nothing else. Now, similarly, the word vanja here can mean barren, like a lady who cannot have children, or a plant that cannot bear fruit, but it has its spiritual meaning, namely that if we do an action, that action will not bring any consequence. It will just finish there where it was finished. Okay, 3 views that deny kamma and its results. These, I think, are very interesting and very important if you live in a community where people try to believe in various philosophies. So these 3 views comprise the wrong views. So there are 62 basic wrong views explained in the Brahmajala Sutta, the very first discourse of our scriptures, and we can summarize them into 3. So it is the inefficacy view. Well, not really. But many of the 62 views would be included in these 3. So the inefficacy view, 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗲, it denies the action of unwholesome and wholesome kamma. So whatever you do, it's fine. It will not create any consequence in this life or in next life. So whatever you do, it doesn't really matter. So that's the first wrong view. Second wrong view, the rootlessness view. 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗃. It denies the root of results. So in the ākiriya ditti, you learn that there is no consequence. Now here, āhetuka-ditti believes that whatever we experience is not dependent on lobha, dosa, moha. It is not dependent on greed, hatred, ignorance. However, according to the Buddha's teachings, we believe that all of our experiences, all of our existence is dependent on tanha, it's the second noble truth. And this tanha is powered by greed, hatred, ignorance. So everything that is here is based on the roots. We have 6 roots actually, and they are greed, hatred, ignorance, non-greed, non-hatred, non-ignorance. And you could ask, well, wait, isn't non-greed, non-hatred, non-ignorance a good thing? Because non-greed means generosity, non-ignorance means loving kindness, and non-ignorance means. So non-greed is generosity, non-hatred is loving kindness, and non-ignorance is wisdom. So aren't these actually good things? They are good, but they're roots of birth, old age, illness, and death, because they're based on ignorance. If you remove ignorant and thus become an arahant, well, then of course you do not you do not make any of these roots. So you only do kiriya. So this is hetu, but an arahant is doing kiriya. It's different. And kiriya does not bring results. All right? And whatever is happening to us cannot be caused by kiriya. Okay, the non-existence view, nattika-ditti, it denies the result of any cause. So this is basically the number 3 and number 1 are very similar. But this nattika-ditti basically suggests that everything is haphazard. Whatever happens is just whatever it happens. It removes conditionality. Now, for example, this view number 1 and view number 2 could be beliefs by some scientists and by some clever people today. But number 3 is very strictly denied, even by the nihilist scientists who believe that whatever you do doesn't matter. However, they believe that everything that is actually caused by something. There's always a cause. Now, the non-existence view, nattika-ditti, is a little bit danger in some religions that believe in a God creator who has no cause, uncaused. You could say, but wait, isn't nibbana also uncaused? Yes, nibbana is uncaused. However, what is nibbana? Nibbana is the cessation of body, feelings, perceptions, intentions, consciousness. Nibbana is not something. It is wrong to say that it's nothing, but nibbana is also not nothing. Or another way, it is not a result. Nibbana is not a result. Now here we are talking about causes of results. These 3 views all in some way deny the workings of karma and its result. So now we are going to look at these 20 ways. We were already mentioning them before. So these 20 ways. In brief, the Buddha explains, okay, so, these are the results. Let me see. So these are the results of the wrong 20 views. So these are the 20 views related to the 5 aggregates. So the idea that that there is permanence. No, I'm not sure, but I could make 20 views which would be correct, but I'm not sure whether they would be these 20 views. Permanence in 5 aggregates, pleasurableness or desirability in the 5 aggregates, then self in the 5 aggregates, and beauty in the 5 aggregates. And we would get 20. But I wonder whether these 20 types here are actually different. Whatever are those 20, based on the belief in permanence, satisfactoriness, self, and beauty. These 20 result in birth, old age, illness, and death. They result in rebirth. So we get here the different kinds of those results. So the person goes round and round, so is born, gets old, ill, dies in one life, in another life, and in another life, and so on. And that is related to the 5 aggregates, or the person goes round based on. Okay, so here we have some linguistics problem. So, all right, goes round, then going round. Here we have just the tense different. He going round and circling. It's not actually grammatically correct. And he is not released from materiality. Okay, so seems more like there 15. He is not released from suffering, I declare. The dog is bound with a clog. So for those of you who were not here before, I will explain it in brief. Here, the clog is a piece of wood attached to the neck of the dog, and as the dog, and it's hanging from the neck, and as the dog is running, the piece of wood knocks the feet, the legs of the dog. So that's very painful, and so the dog doesn't run. An uneducated ordinary person, 𝗷𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲, has much ignorance and craving and clings to the wrong view of identity. So the wrong view of identity is entirely removed by stream entry, and it is not removed by non-stream entry. So as you can see, we need to be very careful here, because there are many people who are just going to become stream enterers through their ardent effort in following the Eightfold Noble Path, but they still did not understand that not self entirely. And based on that not understanding, would you say that they are uneducated ordinary persons? I would be careful about that. So long as there is ignorance and craving, the kammic potency of one of those actions will mature. In other words, until the person is not an arahant, there will be kamma. Okay, so here we are now, at this moment, however, we are talking about an arahant. Not even stream enter would not be enough, because the stream enter still has ignorance and craving, and the stream enter still makes a kammic potency. And indeed, the stream enterer's actions will mature at their death, and they will create rebirth linking consciousness. And they will also, potentially, for the stream enterer, cause disease, old age, and death in their next life. So we need to be very careful. So we could summarize that there are 3 kinds of uneducated people. 1, who is the slave upasaka, who does not have faith in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, does not follow the precepts, believes in superstition, believes in astrology rather than in kamma, and supports other ascetics and monks more than the Buddhist monks. Second level of an uneducated person would be a person who already has pretty well understood 5 aggregates, 8 Eightfold Noble Path, and meditates very well, and knows the Buddha's teachings pretty well, and understands conditionality and so on and on, but is not a stream enterer yet. Then the third kind of uneducated person is a stream enterer, once returner, and non-returner. Why? Well, because they still make kamma, they still get born again in their next life potentially, and simply because they're not arahants, they still did not eradicate all of their ignorance. So here we have three kinds of uneducated people. But ordinary, putujjana, are only the first two. And actually our commentaries, the Theravada Buddhist commentaries, distinguish only these two as uneducated. A very interesting fun fact is that while the Buddha would sometimes pretty hard scold monks for doing something wrong, saying, "You are useless," literally, is that called? 𝗀𝗂𝗯𝗀𝗃𝗃, useless man, which however commentaries explain as useless on the way towards Nibbana. In other words, if you continue doing this, you cannot attain Nibbana. So the commentaries a little bit downplay that, but it's no problem. So the Buddha says to monks who do something wrong that they are useless. But the interesting thing is, the Buddha never says that to a stream enterer. Even when Venerable Ananda does something seriously wrong, and the Buddha is very seriously disappointed, the Buddha doesn't say that Venerable Ananda is a 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃, useless person. Well, this would be contradicting all of the other teachings, right? Because 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃 means that they have entered the stream and they are destined to become enlightened. In other words, not only that they are useful because they continue on the way towards enlightenment, but they already have it destined in the most Western meaning as you can understand it. That means they will become enlightened. Like it or not, whether the world gets destroyed or not, they will become enlightened. So the Buddha would never say that they're useless. So the idea that a stream enterer is uneducated is dangerous. Not necessarily wrong, but it is dangerous. So I would like to make sure that you all understand that speaking about stream enterers in the way that we have read today, such as, oh, they're uneducated because they still do kamma, they're still born again, and they still did not remove all of ignorance, is dangerous. And if a person who's not a stream enterer dares to say that, according to Visuddhimagga, not according to the suttas, according to the Visuddhimagga, they will not be able to become enlightened. A person who criticizes an enlightened person, an unenlightened person who criticizes an enlightened person cannot become enlightened, according to Visuddhimagga, according to our meditation guide. Is it true? I personally think that it's still possible for a person who criticizes an enlightened person while being unenlightened themselves to achieve enlightenment. And I have an evidence. That evidence is the Pitaka. And there we have the sutta where the Buddha is going to teach the monks the Four Noble Truths for the first time. It is known as the 𝗷𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗃 Sutta. And in this discourse, the monks say, "O Buddha," or "O Gautama," they don't call him Buddha yet, "you are greedy." And that's a blame. That's an insult. These monks, the Panchavaggi monks, insult the Buddha. So what will you do with that? They insult the Buddha. Does that mean that because they insulted the Buddha, they went to hell right away? That the earth opened up below them and they just fell in the hell? Or did something else happen? Indeed, something else happened. The monks listened to the Buddha's teachings and became enlightened. Within a few days, all of those 5 became arahants. So then we have to ask, but wait, if you insult an enlightened person, you still have a solution. You still can become enlightened. You still may not go to hell if you apologize. That's what the 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗃 book says. So you apologize, and then everything is fine. So you insult an enlightened person, then you apologize to the enlightened person, and everything is fine. And you can become enlightened. Everything's okay. So then we have to ask, wait, but did the 5 monks apologize to the Buddha for saying that he is greedy? They didn't. They didn't. No reference, no such information that the 5 ascetics, the 5 friends of the ascetic Gautama, that they would apologize to the Buddha for insulting him. Dare to say that the Buddha is greedy. Dare to write it somewhere in Myanmar. You will go to prison. So these 5 monks, ascetics, they insulted the Buddha, and without apologizing, they listened to the Buddha's teachings and became arahants within a few days. Isn't that interesting? So it apparently doesn't always work that if you insult an enlightened person, you will not be anything and you will go to hell and so on and on. But still, of course, it makes a better society if we don't insult each other. And it makes even a better society if we happen to insult somebody and then we apologize. So what we need to do here is to be careful. So we do not suggest that stream mentors are evil or that they are uneducated or something like this. Because that's dangerous. Because if it is true that 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗃 is right, and you could say, well, certainly the 5 monks, they were a very special exception, which supports the role that indeed, if you insult an enlightened person, you will not become enlightened. In rhetorics, you can always find a reason for anything you want. There's no problem finding reasons. So if 𝗀𝗶𝗸𝗃 is right, and insulting an enlightened person becomes 100% block on your way towards enlightenment, well, then we probably shouldn't insult enlightened people. And so we definitely should not insult stream mentors. So we do not say about stream mentors that they're uneducated. We do not say that somehow they're ordinary persons, which means not enlightened. And instead, we wonder about ourselves, so am I already an arahant or not? And if I am not an arahant, then I stop criticizing and continue the practice. If I am an arahant, well, then I'm fine and I don't have to criticize. Okay, so today it was a little bit coarse maybe for some of you, but we need to make the things clear. Because if the things are not clear, then this is not good for the society and for the Buddha's teachings. We need to be respectful to each other, but at the same time, we need to be critical. And if we don't understand something, we need to ask. Now, in the text that we are reading, there are many things to analyze, many things to criticize. And I would like to invite you and welcome you in 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗃. 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗃 is a synonym for 𝗀𝗃vāda. It's just that people like to use 𝗀𝗃vāda more. 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗃 is the Buddhist teachings practiced in Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, in Thailand, a little bit in Laos, a little bit more in Cambodia. Now it's gradually growing in Vietnam. And it's also pretty famous in Maharashtra in India. But 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗃vāda as 𝗀𝗃vāda has this one very special characteristics: being skeptic, analyzing, splitting hair, wanting to understand everything and anything all the times. So you want to understand, you want to analyze. So that's all for my input today. We are definitely beyond the time, a little bit more than expected, but I would like to give space for at least 2 questions if you have. So if you have any questions, make sure you write them in YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching this video. And during this live session, that means right now, we'll be able to see them so I can address them right away and answer them.
Questions and answers session will start now. Post your questions in the Facebook and YouTube chat or comments section.
All right. Well, there are so many comments. How does the concept of soul arise? Many civilizations have this concept. That's right, because that's the way it feels like. All right, it feels like the sun is rotating around the planet. Does that mean that the sun is rotating around the planet? It doesn't. And still, it just feels so much like it. So in the same way, it just feels so much like it that there is soul, except there is none. So that's my answer. If you feel that the answer is not complete, please ask in a different way so that I can address it more in detail. Let's move on to the next question. How does the concept of God or gods arise? So the concept of God is very important. Now, the question here is whether this question is actually correct. Does a concept of God arise, or does actually God visit human? And based on the visit, humans talk about God. Or you could take it in a yet a different way. How does it happen that people perceive gods? Now I see you are using big G, so I will here play with the G letter. So if the letter G is small, and it's the same thing when it is big, then in many cases, according to the reports, whether they're right or not, we don't know, but based on the reports, it seems that people perceive the existence of God, or people conceive, that's where you get the word of concept. People conceive of God based on their encounter with God. So because people encounter a God, they believe that there is a God. Does that make sense? You encountered a dog, you encountered a cat, so you believe that there are cats and dogs in the world. To me, that makes sense. Now, the question is, however, whether the people really encounter a God. And although in Buddhism we do not question whether people encounter a God with small g, I would question whether people encounter a God with big G. Is the God that the people encountered the God with small g or big G? That would be my question. But of course, in many cases, and I worry that it's the majority, people believe that they encounter a God, be it G, small or big, but actually they do not encounter any of the two. It's just their mind that's playing with them. So we have 3 encounters with God: big G, small g, no G. Now I realize how it's funny, but anyway, so these are these 3 kinds of encounter with God. The Buddha is talking about these 3 kinds. The Buddha doesn't count them as 3, but the Buddha explains how people start to conceive of God in the Brahmajala Sutta that we mentioned actually during today's meeting. The Buddha explains in Brahmajala Sutta 62 wrong views, and among those wrong views is a view that eternal God exists. And the Buddha explains that there are cases when the Brahmas who live with the first Brahma who appeared in this world, since the time that the world reappeared after its previous destruction. So these new gods who are with this old god, they believe that the old god is the creator. They die, they're born as humans, and they go to the forest, meditate, they remember their past lives. And through their memory of their past lives, they remember how they were the Brahmas with this. And they remember how at those times they believed that the old Brahma created the world. And based on that encounter with the old Brahma, which they remember through their psychic powers that they got under the tree, they start to teach people that there is a God creator. That is the ideal way how a belief in a God creator appears, through subduing greed and ignorance. Unfortunately, yes, greed and hatred. Unfortunately, today we have many religions that didn't need that. No need. No need of going to the forest and meditating and following some rules and being satisfied with little and getting psychic powers. Not at all. Why would you need that? You just climb a mountain, see a bush, and you have it. I don't like that. I don't like that. I like more the version of the Buddha where the encounter with the God is so powerful, is based on reducing greed, hatred, achieving psychic powers, being satisfied with little, living a homeless life. Yeah, that's the Indian ideal, not the Western. But that doesn't mean that the God, which is remembered by the ascetic who got the psychic powers, is in any way different from the God who is seen in the bush on the mountain. Of course, they're different, but that is a different story. So, my point is that if the people believe in God creator, very probably, but that's my idea, because I'm here providing a statistical result based on what I have somewhere learned and read, not on being omniscient. So my idea, my feeling is just feeling that most often people believe in a God creator because the one who taught them that there is a God creator really met him, or they believe that they met him. So it's not like just a made up idea. It is based on personal encounter, except that the encounter, based on the Buddhist teachings, is not encounter with God creator, but it's encounter with something else, either with one's own illusion, or with some smaller God, or with some higher God, or with a Brahma. And it will depend on each of those so-called, what do you call it, prophets, whether they have met a smaller god, like lesser god with a lower lifespan and a smaller, lower power, or a higher god with higher lifespan and more power, or a Brahma. And we have many, many Brahmas, thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Brahmas. I don't really know how many Brahmas we do have, but many. And these Brahmas live in different worlds. We have 20 worlds of Brahmas. In each of these worlds, there are Brahmas, just like in this one world of humans, we are many humans. And they have 20 worlds of Brahmas, 20 worlds of God creators. Quite a lot of God creators, right? Okay, so the concept of God apparently arises based on personal encounter, on the trust that what this thing or being in the bush or in the memory of past life says is correct. It's trust. So that God says that he is eternal, that he created the world. So the person who sees that God or speaks with this entity, they believe it. And that's where the concept arises. Okay, let's move on to another question. Can you tell the stories of subduing of Mara, please? Okay, so we will finish by this question today. So, two stories. And it seems in Myanmar, Buddhist scholars do not really agree which one was the one. So the one that is probably most appreciated and most trusted in Myanmar, and it's in our scriptures, but that's the problem, that it's only with a very short, simple mention in our scriptures. It's not really explained. The explanation is coming from Mahayana literature. So some Theravada Buddhists worry that maybe this short little mention of Venerable Upagutta in our sub-commentary, which means the commentary to a commentary to the Buddha's teachings, and in this very specific case, it's actually not even a commentary to a commentary of the Buddha's teachings. It's actually a commentary to a non-canonical scripture. It's called 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗶𝗲. And in this 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗲, at one point, there is a very brief mention that Upagutta, the great master, Venerable Arahant Upagutta, subdued Mara. And therefore, Mara is now soft. That's the word they use in Pali, soft, muduko. And because of this like serves as a evidence. It's not really strong evidence, but in Myanmar, sub-commentaries are very much appreciated and respected. They have their very important value, that's totally for sure. But here it is probably worth it to think about it. In Myanmar, this very mention is the evidence that Mara was subdued by Venerable Upagutta. Truth is, however, that we do not have this kind of mention that Mara has become soft in the story of Venerable Moggallana. Venerable Moggallana I think it's in Majjhima Nikaya, but I forgot which sutta it is. So in the suttas, in the original teachings, we have the mention that Mara entered the stomach of Venerable Moggallana. And Moggallana, because he has psychic powers, the monk most famous for his most powerful psychic powers, right behind the Buddha, Venerable Moggallana notices, oh, now Mara is in my stomach. And so Venerable Moggallana speaks to Mara. Mara, do you know that in one of your past lives, I was your relative? Actually, I think he was like his uncle or something else. I don't remember. Anyway, he was his blood relative. And he says, you know what? Previously, I also did things like you. And then I suffered very much. And then he recounts a story when in a previous life, Venerable Moggallana himself was a Mara. And as a Mara, Venerable Moggallana to be, he possessed a boy. And then, as a boy, he took a rock and he threw that rock on the Buddha of that time, a different Buddha. And then the Buddha turned around to see the boy and he says, Mara, that's too much. And Mara then disappears from the boy's body and reappears in the hell. And so Venerable Moggallana tells this story to that Mara of the Buddha Gautama's time. And the Mara gets scared and, leaves from the body of Venerable Moggallana, from the stomach. But the scriptures do not really say that that Mara, due to this incident, became soft or that he stopped to disturb others and so on and on. And probably it's because it's not written there that it's believed that Mara was disturbed monks and so on until the time of the great master, Venerable Upagutta. We do not really have any mention of Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 except this one in 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗸𝗲. So there are people in Myanmar who wonder whether this mention in 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗸𝗲 is actually of any value. No need to say whether it's right or wrong. Their idea is that this mention is useless. It doesn't have any value because Mara is supposed to be already sufficiently admonished by Venerable Moggallana. So there was no need for Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 to say anything or do anything to Mara. Whether 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 existed or not, that's not included in the criticism. The idea is that Mara was already subdued by the time of Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲. So these are the two cases of subduing Mara, by Venerable Moggallana, by Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲. But the case of Venerable Moggallana is written in our original discourses, so it is very powerful and very important. Whereas the case of subduing by Venerable 𝗶𝗶𝗸𝗲 is explained very briefly, unlike the case of Venerable Moggallana. And it is in a subcommentary, which is actually not based on an original scripture. It is actually based on a non-canonical scripture. The non-canonical scripture describes a canonical scripture, but it's not included in the canon. It's a book that explains Vinaya rules. It's a Vinaya scripture, 𝗷𝗶𝗸𝗶𝗸𝗲. So this is my answer. I would like to invite you, everybody, to come and see us next week. Those of you who had questions that I did not answer, hopefully our organizer will save those answers and collect them in our very special table where we collect questions. And I hope to answer those questions next time or when the time comes. So we have a special table where we collect questions, and you can actually access that table to see whether your question has ever been answered and whether it has been actually accepted to be answered. Probably we accept all of questions that do not contain anything vulgar. You do not have the possibility to really write into the table, but you can make a comment. So you click on a cell, then right-click, select a comment, and write in the comment. Select done or okay or whatever it is. We will see the comment and we will integrate it into the table. So just now I have sent to you, both in YouTube and Facebook, the link to that table. So freely access it. Send us there any questions that you want in an appropriate cell, and we'll check it out and integrate it, and hopefully we'll answer it as soon as possible. You can then come to that table anytime later and check whether the question is answered. There will also be the link to the answer. So you can immediately access, and you can also be inspired by the other questions. Click on the link that's provided and learn the answers right away. May you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you be successful in everything you do.
Concludes today's lecture on the workings of karma. This series is held every Wednesday at the same time, that is, 2 p.m. Coordinated Universal Time or Greenwich Mean Time. This translates to 7:30 p.m. Sri Lanka and India time. Please note your local time and join us every week. Let us take a moment to share merits with everyone now. Stay tuned for more content like the workings of karma. We are working hard to bring practical insights from Buddhism to improve your lives and the world at large. To get notified about new releases and also to help us spread the word, if you haven't already done so, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting and turning on notifications. Also please consider watching some of our other content. We also have content in other languages too. Also, please consider subscribing to our other language channels. Hoping to see you again in our live programs.